Pledge of allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good afternoon, Commissioners. I'd like to add correspondence from the County Executive as for receive and file for item 4B. It's moved. Is that supported? Support. Moved by Commissioner Hall, supported by Commissioner Kraft. Motion to adopt the agenda. Moved by Commissioner Gillette, supported by Sauger. Please vote. Agenda is adopted. Item 4 is public participation. Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Anyone from the public wish to be heard? Anyone from the public wish to be heard? No one's been from the public is here. We'll close public participation. Item 4B, we got correspondence that was on your desk. Just put on your desk addressed to Commissioner Kleinfeld from County Executive Hackle regarding the forfeiture funds. Need a motion to receive and file this. Moved by Juliet, supported by Romano. Any discussion on this item? I see the prosecutor here. Is there anything you wish to say on this?
Yeah, sure. Thank you, Commissioner. Look, we've
turn the mic up to the center button.
There we go.
Okay.
You guys hear me better now?
Very good.
I couldn't hear me before. Right?
Hearing you better, Eric.
Let me say a few things about this entire thing. You know, this whole thing drives me a little crazy, and here we are going on. I've always thought I'm doing a good thing, that instead of coming to you guys to spend county money for the things that we need to run our office, we use repeat drunk drivers funds. And this whole thing started, I don't know, a decade ago or so, when before this form of government, before it was just 13, when it was 26 of you sitting here, we found out that our forfeiture funds were being commingled with county general funds. Well, when I spoke to the finance director back then, which was several finance directors ago, the word I got was, well, there's really nothing we can do about it. That's the way we've always done it. So there's 3 separate forfeiture laws: drug forfeiture, criminal forfeiture, and drunk driving forfeiture. One of the forfeiture laws says that the treasurer is to house the money. One of them doesn't say anything, and the other one says the seizing authority can open a bank account in an established bank, very clearly. So at that point, when I saw that the county was commingling the funds, and once again, this is a long time ago, we decided to use that part of forfeiture law to open our own accounts. So this has been going on for quite a while, and you know, when I see secret accounts, I want to scream. I mean, we've put out, I don't know, 100 press releases on all the things that we have done with this money. I've been here in front of you guys talking, well, some of you guys who've been here for a while, talking about this over the years. The papers have written stories about this money that we give to all these charities and all these nonprofits, law enforcement related, has come from the forfeiture accounts. So there's never been anything hidden about this money, never been anything about it. But once we got the new form of government, Steve Smeagol has been on me to try and get it back into the county. So for several years now, Steve and I have been going back and forth and trying to get this money back to the county. Well, in 2015, we were pretty close until we got a memo from our corporation counsel, Shapka, that said that this money could be used for salaries. Well, it's been our position all along in the law that we believe supports that and I've stood in front of you guys saying we can't use this money for salaries. And this is going back a while, probably, you know, some of you weren't here for this, but we've always believed that we could not use this money for salaries. So when Shapka said that this money could be used for salaries, that stopped our ability to move it forward. There's an Attorney General opinion on point that says that, but there's a lot of law. I guess there's a lot of law when you have 3 different statutes that go over forfeitures that point in different directions. So it's always been our thought that we can't use this money for salaries, for raises, for bonuses, and we've never done that, and we've always said to you guys the same thing, that we can't do that. So in 2015, that sort of stopped everything. Then last summer, again, we started over this again with Steve, and I said, Steve, look, as long as you guys say you're not going to use it for salaries and we can still give money to all the nonprofits, we're good. So he said, okay, let's try and get this together, and then that's when Larry sent his letter to the state. So we had a meeting with Corporation Counsel, the Treasurer's Office, the State Treasurer's Office, the Attorney General and Solicitor General. And the first thing that the Deputy Attorney General said to all of us was, this is not an investigation. First thing that she said out of her mouth, we're just here to try and get this resolved. And we all wanted it resolved, including myself. And I said, look, the only thing we care about is we have spending control, that I can still give money to nonprofits pursuant to the statute, and they can't be used for salaries. Well, everybody there agreed to that at that point, and we said, great, we're good to go. So this has been going on for quite a while, and Steve and I agreed to this, 6 months, Steve Smeagol and I agreed to this 6 months ago. It was just a matter of trying to get these little things ironed out, and they've been ironed out now. So we've turned it over to the county, and look, we've seen the problem that some people say that we should have gotten, when we give these money to nonprofits, we should have gotten a contract from the nonprofits. Well, statutes don't really say that about it, and they say that I'm the chief law enforcement officer is in charge of determining what's law enforcement related, and that's what we rely on. But look, now that it's with the county, if that's what we have to do to give money to these nonprofits, I've never had a problem with that. And let me tell you something, the nonprofits aren't going to have a problem with giving us a contract, because they have come to use this money to establish their budgets, and look, the ones we're giving to, Care House, which, interviews victims of rape and abuse, and FAN and CARE and all the anti-drug coalitions that we give to. We always say we're tough on crime, but we're tough on the causes of crime. So we do everything we can to try and get in front of this. So I guess what I'm just trying to say is, look, I'm proud of how we spent this money. We've given so much money back to the police departments. 50% of everything we take in has gone back to the police departments, and they've used it to, buy bulletproof vests, to buy drug dogs, to, do trainings. And that's what we spend a lot of our money on. We spend, I don't know what it is, $2,000 or $3,000 a month on cell phones for our office that you guys don't have to spend on. When I started in 2005, our budget for training was moved to $0. Our budget for cell phones was $0. Our budget for in-court technology was $0. Our budget now remains the same with those, and mostly because we fund it ourselves. So we've never had to come to you guys to fix. The rest of the county you guys have to pay for to do this stuff. But we were able to fund this ourselves, and I thought that was kind of a good thing that when I started, we didn't have a colored printer in our office. Our APAs were doing courtroom technology with a chalk and a chalkboard. Well, now we have so much computer work. We're like CSI in there, because that's what juries expect, and our conviction rates show it. So, look, I'm proud of everything we've done. We've got nothing to hide in this letter that's come forward. I know this isn't the time to talk about any votes or anything on it, but sure, we agreed to it. We turned over the last 2 years' worth of stuff to Steve Smeagol a month ago, because Steve said that's what we need to get the budget straight, 2 years of records to do an audit on. So we've never had a problem with that, and I just wanted you guys to know where we stood, and that I'm damn proud of everything we've done with this.
Thank you. Thank you for coming up and talking to us about this. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Eric, for being here to discuss the issue.
Thank you.
And also, I appreciate the fact that you have worked with finance and other departments within the county to provide a better process moving forward that I think is more satisfactory to everybody involved. So I appreciate that very much. The records that have been released, first off, I'm still a little confused about some elements of the law. And you mentioned there's like 3 laws, and it may be difficult to clarify when you're looking at 3 different statutes, or it may be difficult for anyone to clarify. But in many, you mentioned that finance had agreed that it was acceptable to give the nonprofits, but I hear the opposite from finance and our corporation counsel telling me that that's something that shouldn't be happening, particularly to churches or to various nonprofits that are not specifically related to victim restitution or something. So it's unclear to me what the law then really is with regard to nonprofits. Can we just, is any nonprofit good to go? Can we give it to the Humane Society? Can we give it to?
Well, thanks, Commissioner. Let me say, when we had these meetings initially about this, it was, the problem that we were having was that we were doing this without having a contract with them for their services. So now that we've established that with Corporation Counsel, that we need a contract for their services, that's how we will do it going forward. So the individual nonprofits, well, that's something that we have to discuss with Corporation Counsel to determine which ones fit. Now, when it says law enforcement purposes and law enforcement related charities and law enforcement related nonprofits, me being chief law enforcement officer, I think that certain things are. Now, when you say churches, look, if people give me grief about giving too much money to nonprofits or churches to help others, well, listen, I'll take that hit every day. But when it comes to specifically, look, care house, FAN, these are obviously right in the wheelhouse of what we do. We're tough on crime, but we like to be tough on the causes of crime. I'm sick of that. I don't see these cases until after the people have already broken into your house or these people are already hooked on opioids. Well, the problem that we have is, 2 years ago, the state cut $35 million from Macomb County and CMH, community mental health. Well, who's on the front line of dealing with homeless and mental illness? The churches are. So instead of our police departments having to go pick up these people off the streets and get them into shelters and get them into other places where they could be working on other things, we have churches that are able to do that sort of thing. And on top of that, the ones that aren't able to get in, the ones with the mental illness and the opioid addiction and the homeless, well, look, they're trying to find a place to stay right now, and they're going to be committing crimes. I'm not saying all of them are committing crimes, but look, our jails are filled with people that have opioid addiction and mental illness. Every jail, if we didn't have opioid addiction or mental illness, you probably need the three of us. That's the only prosecutors you probably need in our office. But unfortunately, that's not the way it is. So we help out in other areas that help us prevent crime. And I think the churches that we've given to, they have a good history of trying to get in front of crime and trying to stop the mental illness and the opioid addictions before they get to us.
So, okay, and I agree that churches do a lot of good work in our community and so forth, as do organizations, like the Special Olympics and others that, you have made donations, that fund has made donations to over the years. I agree that those folks do good work. I'm just questioning what the law requires from us or from the county before we decide which charities we want to give money to and which ones we don't want to give money to.
Well, now that it's with the county, before anything has gone out, we will have the opportunity to list parameters for it that we all agree
There
to.
were also checks, donations to union organizations, to police unions.
Oh, okay. All right. I'm like,
Does that fall under charity, or how did that work?
those are honor guards. So honor guard police departments, honor guard through the police departments. That's part of our law enforcement related charities.
So, okay, I guess I'm not sure, the unions run the honor guards?
Commissioner Dulad, you have me at a disadvantage. I'm not sure about
Okay.
unions, police
Okay.
unions.
And,
Mr. Chair,
Well,
can I just a
well-
point of order?
what,
And I'll remove my name from the list. It's just a point of order. Okay?
It's just that this is a receive and file on a letter that we got that was just added to the agenda today. So I don't know that neither the prosecutor or any of the commissioners up here knew there'd be a question and answer. I just wanted to point that out. I, for one, certainly wasn't ready for it, but I just wanted to point that out.
And-
Thank
and
you,
I-
and I'll remove my name.
I apologize if these questions are inappropriate for this particular agenda item. I just know there's been obviously a lot of media that has
Yeah.
hit about this, and with
Well, I think-
a prosecutor here, I don't know.
we're going to allow the discussion because it's been out there, it's been actually hanging out there maybe too long, actually. So we got to get this prosecutor
Okay.
came here to discuss it, so, I mean.
Leanne,
if you
I'm
have
sorry, I
any
just
questions, we
don't-
can,
oh,
it's going to Commissioner Kleinfeld's committee, it's going to be on an agenda, I believe, and,
Okay, I just feel I have a responsibility, given all the media was out there, on the issue to discuss it
Absolutely.
when we have the prosecutor here, but if there's
Well-
another time or place, I'm willing to.
well, please, I'm not telling you
No,
to
he's
stop.
siding with you, so go
Okay.
ahead.
So just
Well,
two other
speakers,
things,
so-
Eric.
Leanne, I'm sorry, I don't recognize the
Okay,
police
I'll
union
try
stuff.
to pull those out of those. It was like 400 pages worth of stuff. and
There's a
I
lot, yeah,
Probably went
sure.
through like 80 pages of it, but there was some written to police associations and unions. A couple other notes, like in a case where where the fund paid for items that were useful in advancing the office's work, like you need a new desk, or you need a new whatever. I mean, to me, that makes sense that we would use those kind of funds for that. But was there any bidding process? You know, the county has a bidding ordinance that that we have to go through with certain items. Did your department use a bidding process in making those kind of purchases, or?
Well, so in all this time, I think probably the vast majority of the time that we spent on furniture was when our offices were gutted and those 3 floors started from scratch. And the county did a great job. Our offices are beautiful. Part of the problem was that it's tough to tell people coming from the outside that we have 20,000 files a year that come through our office. And it's not like December 31st, those 20,000 files are gone, and then we start from scratch. We have 2 years of files in our office because cases just don't end. So what I'm saying is the vast majority of the furniture that we bought for the office was through the same people that were doing our offices already. So we bought, you know, cabinets and all kinds of stuff for our file rooms and places to store all this stuff through them.
So it was
that's
sort of
general.
associated with the bidding that was done for the bigger projects,
Yes,
essentially?
for the most part, but let me say this, so we never went through a bidding process, and we always thought because it's law enforcement related that it was outside of that, but
Got it.
now that we're with the county, and now that we're in the county, and we've discussed this with finance, we know obviously now that that's what we have to do.
Okay. And I guess the final question is, that I have at least for today, is in looking through some of those documents that had been, you know, made public, I think the ones that seemed to bring up the most question for a lot of people were the even amounts that were paid out to credit cards, you know, $8,000 to American Express. You know, I don't know enough about, you know, what was involved with the process, but, you know, it was unclear, at least in the media or from the outside world, whose credit cards they were, why they were all even amounts, you know, so often, or not all, but oftentimes, you know, such even amounts, $2,000, $8,000. So I think that a lot of the, some of it was kind of self-explanatory. You give $500 to a church, we can debate whether or not it should have been done a different way or whatever it is, but that's kind of self-explanatory. Same with the purchases for equipment. We could debate whether it should have been through a different bidding type of procedure or not, but I think that was the one thing that is the biggest thing hanging out there that isn't self-explanatory.
Well, going back to what I said earlier, we never had a budget for training, for travel, for courtroom technology. So when we're talking about credit cards, we have one person that books the trainings, books the travel for the trainings, books anything that's associated with them. We don't have, you know, 10 credit cards throughout the office. We have one person that books all of it. And as far as the even numbers of it, I'm sorry, that's the first I've heard of that. But we use that, so then we have, instead of a bunch of people booking stuff with their credit cards, we have one person who pays for things as they book them and as they buy things, and then we have a review process from there. But let me say this, you know, that's one of the reasons that I sit here and say, you know, when I spoke with Steve about this, that we're looking forward to certain aspects of an audit, so we can get our receipts together and show them. I mean, look, everything we spent was for the office, so look, we've never had a problem with that. We've never had a problem with any of it. You know, our problem has always been that we want to do this without having to, I don't want to say burden you guys, but we don't have to spend county taxpayer dollars. And I'm so proud that I get to say that we have the best trained office in the state, and it hasn't been on the back of one single taxpayer. I mean, it's on the back of, you know, I think it's beautiful that repeat drunk drivers are funding our guys to get better at prosecuting them. But as far as the credit card stuff, well, that's how we've always done it. We have one credit card for the most part that buys all the equipment, books the trainings, books the travel for those trainings, and she pays for them.
Okay. Well, thank you, and again, I appreciate you being here today, and again, I don't think anybody doubts that you have been acting in the interests of the prosecutor's office and the county and people that need the services of the prosecutor's office, but I commend you for working to move in a manner that's more consistent with overall county policies.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Thank you.
Commissioner Romano.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for coming, Mr. Prosecutor. Thanks for explaining. I just want to piggyback a little bit on Commissioner Drollet, because when that stuff hit the papers, it stunk. It did stink when it hit the papers, and we had to answer to constituents about, as you mentioned the word, and I hate to use that word, secret accounts. It wasn't a secret account. Accounts were there. They were always there. And it wasn't, in fact, they were being hidden. So when we answered to them, we had to come up with answers, and we didn't have those answers, and I appreciate you coming in here. I also appreciate, as the rest of the commissioners, you saved the county some money by using your drug forfeiture account to pay for some of the stuff that you just mentioned that you did, which is, I think, fine for us, because it's that much less money that the county had to spend on it. So what I've thought of, and I've mentioned it to the treasurer, what I'd like to see is, we have it on disc, but I'd like to see every commissioner have a copy and hard copy of all the checks that were written, so that we have a chance to look at them. And please understand, I'm not questioning your integrity. I would just like to see those checks on hard copy. I understand Ms. Kleinfeld has it on a disc or something. Save your disc. I'd like to, somebody has it. You can request it if you want it,
Yeah.
but I'd like to see it on hard copy so that all of us get it. This letter that we just received today from County Treasurer Rocca said that they would request that the county go ahead with a forensic audit. I guess my question, you would only audit would be, do you have any objections to having a forensic audit on the account?
Oh, no, we've never had an objection.
Thank
I
you.
mean, 6 months ago, Steve
all I
and I
got.
have been talking about this, so.
That's all I
no.
got. Thank you.
No, we
Go
never
ahead.
had an objection to that.
Commissioner Sauger.
Yeah, Mr. Prosecutor, you guys still handle all the, with your credit card, all the extraditions and procedures, and that goes through your office, right?
We handle an awful lot of things with our
I know.
office, yeah. Expert witness fees, victim fees, bringing victims in from out of the state, bringing witnesses in from out of the state, things that we don't come to you guys for, and we do it ourselves, and it makes it quicker and easier and without having to.
I bring that up because I did that for about 7 years on a department, all the travel, and it went right through your office, never a problem. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner.
Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you, Eric. I don't know if you can answer this question. In part, you did with Commissioner Romano. So we've got a letter here from the county executive and the county treasurer asking for a forensic audit. There's going to be a cost associated with that. So wearing my commissioner hat, I'd like to try to save some money with regard to that. On the other hand, when you were talking, you had said when you were turning this over like 6 months ago or a year ago, you had indicated that Steve said he needed 2 years' worth of documentation to do an audit. Do you know what Steve meant? And again, I don't know if you can answer these questions. I know we're talking hearsay here,
Yeah.
right? You know, but what do you mean by that? Was Steve going to do? Was finance going to do? Once they got the bank records of 2 years and the checks, was finance, our county finance department, going to do their own independent audit?
I thought it was going to be, what's the company that? Plant Moran was going to do it, and that was for setting budget going forward.
Okay.
So when we first started discussing this a while ago, and then when it came up again, in the last, couple months, it was, well, we need 17 and 18 so we can set your budget for 19.
Okay, so that was regards to Plant Moran taking a look at it they do a general audit every year on all things, and so the
Right.
plan was, once it was moved under the general fund, then they were going to do an audit. Okay, but you're indicating based on this letter, and again, I'm not exactly sure what the executive wants or the treasurer, they want a forensic audit. I'd like to have a few more parameters on what that is, but you're saying you'd have no objections to that whatsoever?
No.
Okay, gotcha, fair enough, no, fair enough, thank you.
I have no speakers on the first round for the prosecutor.
Just for clarification, I looked at the charter, and according to the charter, any audit that is above and beyond the yearly audit, any special audit, shall be determined by the audit committee of the board. So I think their position and the reason we got the letter is that they don't have the authority to do that.
Can we use the money from the forfeiture fund to pay for the audit if we have to do it? Since we're always trying to be thrifty around here. It's maintenance.
Well, we'll have to talk to Corporation Counsel a little bit about that.
Well, we'll try.
I don't seem to agree on much these days, but we'll see if we can find some agreement.
All right, Bishop, you out here for the treasurer. Do you have anything to say? I don't want to turn this into a debate or anything, but if you could certainly just...
An opportunity to correct
factual record as far as the treasurer's office is concerned, not necessarily respond to anything that the prosecutor said. I'll be brief.
Please.
So I thought it might be helpful for me to essentially provide a short summary from our point of view of how this unfolded. So Joe Biondo, Chief Deputy, Macomb County Treasurer Larry Rocca. The reason that the treasurer got actively involved in resolving this repeat audit finding from Plant Moran was essentially stemming from a meeting I had with Steve Adair at the Finance Department. And Steve and I met, this would have been mid-June of 2017, and the purpose of the meeting was to discuss the fact that our auditors, our outside auditors in Plant Moran were having difficulty with the prosecutor's office as far as getting additional information as far as this forfeiture account. I say forfeiture account because back in June of 2017, the auditors only knew about one account out of the four. So that led to a conversation with Finance Director Steve Smeagol, Steve Adair, his deputy, myself, and the treasurer. We had this meeting end of June 2017 where we thought the best way to resolve the repeat audit finding from Plant Moran was to send a letter to all the county departments and to inquire as far as any outstanding bank accounts that were not on the county ledger. We would ask them to give us that information. To this day, we still haven't received a response to that letter from the county prosecutor's office, but we did receive letters from all the various other county departments. That led to a follow-up call from Larry Rocca to the county prosecutor, essentially asking, did you get the letter? Because Steve Smeagol, as the finance director, sent out the letter to all the department heads, although Larry Rocca, as the county treasurer, was a co-signer. And Eric Smith indicated he did not receive the email from Steve Smeagol, but we resent it. And that would have been, we're talking now early July, mid-July. And no response from the county prosecutor's office. Larry Rocca took it on his own initiative to call Chemical Bank, where this one forfeiture account had been flagged, and asked Chemical Bank directly, you know, what information you can provide to us as the county treasurer as to these funds. Long story short, we got some limited information, and Larry Rocca was able to discover that these were actually 4 accounts involving closer to $250,000 a year than the one account, arguably 10, 20 grand that we had heard as a number thrown out. So that's why Larry Rocca sent the letter to the state, to essentially inquire from the state as to what the state's official position is on these funds. I did my own independent research. We asked Macomb County Corporation Counsel to do their own research. We talked to Plant Moran, and the determination we came up with in the treasurer's office is that the forfeiture funds are generated through the Office of County Prosecutor. Ergo, they are county funds, and thus subject to all the requirements of any county fund. And that's the long and the short of it, and that's a discussion for another day, but that was essentially the disagreement between the county treasurer, Larry Rocca, and the county prosecutor, Eric Smith. Our position was as straightforward: these are county funds, they should be with the county treasurer. As far as budgeting, how to spend that, that's between you and the Board of Commissioners to work out. This conversation essentially continued at the state level with the AG's people and the treasurer's people, where the takeaway I got from that meeting was that nobody from the state was aware of any other county prosecutor handling forfeiture funds like this. And not only that, but the AG's office itself, anything they forfeited, they certainly didn't handle that money themselves either. They turned it over to the state treasurer. I took that meeting as essentially a professional courtesy to try to work this out amongst ourselves, and that's what we tried to do. And our position from day one, from June 2017 to even now, was always, these are county funds, they need to be with the treasurer's office, and any bank records involving these county funds are ergo property of the county treasurer's office. We had Macomb County Corporation Counsel telling us that these bank records, because they involved county funds, were public records, and that's why we saw that stuff disclosed. So from our point of view, the job of the treasurer was completed on this issue. We acquired the funds. We got all the bank records that apparently we could get from the bank. We got that indirectly for the independent FOIA lawsuits, but we did get them. And so we're doing everything that we're supposed to be doing. And now I think at this point, a forensic audit is warranted so that, quite frankly, we can figure out what happened with these funds. From our point of view, that's a decision that this board has to make, but we would strongly recommend a forensic audit of all 4 accounts, not any one, and of any of the years that we're able to get records for. So it sounds like Eric Smith doesn't have a problem with that. That's great. I mean, that's essentially what we wanted all along and wanted back in June of last year. Going forward, we're available to answer any follow-up questions that this board may have. I've reviewed the documents. We have concerns, and we think a forensic audit would be warranted at this time to hopefully alleviate those concerns. But we'll have to hear back from the forensic auditors once they do their job. And that's really all we have to say on this. We've been doing our job on this from day one, and we're looking to hopefully have this resolved soon.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Biondo. Any question for Mr. Biondo? See no one. Oh, Mr. Commissioner Ha.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, and thank Eric for showing up and giving us the historical background of this issue, and it probably goes much further back than the 2 years that you both referenced here. But what I heard Eric say was, and you just repeated it, he's agreeing to a forensic audit. It's what our treasurer requested and our executive requested. So when we go, I believe it's February 20th into session, according to Commissioner Kleinfeld, it's our responsibility to ascertain expenditures and whether or not there will be a forensic audit. But as far as you 3 parties, everybody agrees that's the best course of action moving forward, for the record.
From the treasurer's office, the answer would be yes.
We already heard it from the prosecutor's office. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Ha. Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Oh, I didn't.
Press to speak, but I mean, if,
Never mind.
I
I
just.
know you always work for a loss of words.
No, I just have a question for the commission to
Please,
mull
go ahead.
over. Just a question for the commission
Okay.
is for February 20th, do you already want RFPs for auditors to be giving presentations, or do you want to discuss it at that time? Because I don't know. I don't want to show up at that day and you guys thinking we would already have that.
No,
I don't want to
I-
make sure I didn't
I
do
think
my
that'd be
job.
jumping the gun. I think they made the decision at your committee meeting.
Okay.
Thank you. Commissioner Leonetti.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Good to see you. Just a question. And I think I'm pretty clear. I think the prosecutor said this, because what we want to do is we want to make sure the county, we're just looking at the county here now, everything has been turned over so that we're like in full compliance based on what you're saying, what the AG does, based on what other prosecutors do. All the money has been turned over to the treasurer's office under the general fund. That's been worked out between you and the prosecutor, correct?
The funds were turned over to the county treasurer's office on November 30th, and documentation showing that the 4 accounts were closed out was provided as well.
Okay. So going forward, this is not going to be a problem. We're all set there. I mean, any other funds the prosecutor gets going forward is going to end up in the general fund account, correct?
That's my understanding how the prosecutor's
Okay.
going to proceed,
All
yes.
right.
So not the general fund.
But
the
it'll be
specific
yeah.
restricted
It'll be
fund.
a line item under the general fund account. That's what I meant by
It all
that.
goes to the general fund, and then we subdivide it into various
Right.
categories. and then
Right.
We give some to the prosecutor.
Okay. So again, I know you're speaking probably on behalf of Larry. I don't know about the county executive. The forensic accounting is going backwards in some ways, correct? Mm-hmm. Okay.
And the issue with that is obviously none of the required documentation that should have been kept involving those transactions was kept. So because these are county records involving county funds, the forensic audit, I think, would be warranted to make sure that that's resolved. Any questions involving those prior transactions?
Do you know what the treasurer's, and again, I know it's not Larry, but you speak through him, and certainly I don't know what the executive wants, because we got to make this decision now if we're going to spend money on a forensic audit. How far back are we looking?
Well, I think there was an obligation for the county to have these funds audited each year. Obviously, that never occurred because the auditors did not have access to the bank records along with finance and the treasurer. So our recommendation would be for each year that there was an audit that was required, it should be audited.
Well, that's like
Well, obviously, you can only go back as far as the records are available, and I believe Macomb County Corporation Council is working with the bank in question to determine if they do have, in fact, all the records.
Okay.
That's a better question for them, maybe.
I'd like to have that answer, obviously, when we have to decide if we're going to, number one, get a forensic audit, and number two, how much are we going to spend to go, how far back? So I appreciate you letting us know your insight on it. Good to see you. Take care.
Thank you,
Yeah,
Commissioner.
I'd be interested to get an opinion from the treasurer's office as to the extent of the forensic audit. That would be very helpful.
I'd be more than happy to help in any way.
I mean, it's his opinion, doesn't mean we're bound by it, but certainly, I mean, it's, these,
If I may, Mr. Chair, I mean, we get this letter from the county executive and the treasurer, and I get what they're saying, but there's not any parameters on what they're looking at for a forensic audit.
Yeah.
Like Commissioner Hoff, everybody agrees now a forensic audit is probably, even the prosecutor says, I welcome it. The question is, how much as we commissioners are we going to spend, how far back are we going to go, what's,
exactly.
Right.
What's reasonable?
Right, exactly. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Leonetti. Commissioner Carabelli.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I'd like to thank both of you for enlightening me a little bit. I guess I'm a little perplexed to the point of sitting up here when there was a gang at 26, and the examples were given to me. We don't look at those funds because I believe the sheriff's department has one. I believe the local municipality police office departments have them. Prosecutors had them. And at one point in time, somebody told me, can't remember who, this is what they used to buy undercover vehicles for. This is what they used to buy the clothing and do these different things. It was nothing that I was supposed to ask the question on because it was not general fund dollars and they didn't want this stuff publicly out there. To the same extent that you've all heard me ask several times of how much money is in our lawsuit pool. No one wants to tell me these numbers and this information. I understand it to a point. But how long ago was the sheriff? They had one too, and I think it was like 2 years ago that ended up changing the way they were handling it into not general fund, but by the treasurer. So I'm still at a little loss in trying to understand. Does the sheriff's department still have one of these? Anybody know?
So it's a restricted fund through the general ledger.
They
So
do have one?
They do that, as long as I've been the chief deputy.
Okay, so to stop you there, I guess I'm going to ask any other commissioners, did you guys know that there was a restricted fund that we didn't know about, or that I didn't know about, that was in there? I'm asking.
Yeah.
And you knew what was the expenditures coming out of that, what it was used for?
Well, Commissioner, to clarify, I think what you're referring to is what's called an impressed account, I believe, and that's strictly for the sheriff's department. To my knowledge, such an account was never set up for the county. What I was referring to was the fact that the sheriff's department does receive forfeiture funds, and it flows through the general fund and the appropriate restricted fund
Okay,
on the
I
county
guess
ledger.
I'm
If
casting
you're
a
asking
wide.
about impressed account, to my knowledge, this board has never set one up for the sheriff's department.
So we don't have one for the sheriff's department either then?
Not to my knowledge, and I believe that the board would have to vote and set that up prior to that being a thing.
Okay, I guess, again, I am still a little lost, so with that said, I think there's a little bit more homework on our end, and I don't know if it needs to be Corporation Council come to the next meeting to give us, I don't know who needs to give it to. I want to understand something before we're going to ask for an audit. I'm not saying I'm against an audit. I want to understand, what are we auditing? First of all, the 3 different types of account. I always thought it was one account. They can be spent different ways. I don't know any of this information. So I guess I need to educate myself. I don't know about the rest of the board members, if you know enough about this and what it can be used for. I just don't know. And to ask for an audit on something, I think we need to have a better understanding to direct any audit you want done. So I don't know who can give us direction as far as, would that be Corporation Council to explain the different laws, or if every account, if one's for drunk driving, one's for drugs, one for the, I don't know what it's supposed to be used for.
We can ask, and
And
we'll get the right
And
answer.
if so, what other accounts out there? I asked the question, the unrestricted, or whatever you just called it.
An impressed account?
An impressed
That
account
would be
needs
for
to be shut
secret
up.
expenditures.
Is that something that we need to set up with the sheriff's office as well?
I believe
Department?
if he requested it, I don't know, that would be a question for the sheriff.
Okay, I guess we have to do a little bit more homework on our end. and I don't mean to muddy the waters, but do you see all the unanswered questions that I'm asking? I don't know the answers, and if somebody has the answers, please explain it to me. I'd like to hear.
Well, just to our request for forensic audit, our position would be that these county funds covered by these financial records, there was a yearly requirement to have them audited. That yearly requirement to have them audited was obviously never met by the county, so that should be probably relevant to your consideration as far as how far you go back. The recommendation from the treasurer would be go back as far as you can with the records available. There was a yearly obligation to audit them. Our position is that obligation should be met.
Thank you, Commissioner Carabelli. There's other questions as to the administration. I mean, they were aware of these accounts just as well as everyone else was in the county. They were so concerned about it, why didn't they raise this question and make it an issue prior to the treasurer being elected? You know, so there's someone to ask. Mr. Romano, you're next.
Thank you. Thanks for coming, Mr. Bien. I just want to make sure that I had made a statement. I want to make sure I was correct when I asked if the treasurer's office could make hard copies of all the checks written through that account so that we could have them here in front of us or look at them beforehand, before the February 20th, in case we had any questions. Maybe we could contact the prosecutor's office and have him explain it, or your office and have them explain what those particular checks were for. But it'd be a lot easier than seeing it on disc if we had it in hard copy. If you could make that available to all the commissioners, that would be great.
We'd be more than happy to make hard copies available to the commissioners.
That's all I have. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Kleinfeld, did you want to say anything else? You're next on the list. I didn't take you off, but.
No, I'm going to let it go. I do have
thank
some,
you.
oh, you're hilarious. I have some things to say at that meeting that's going to clarify a lot of your questions, because there were questions asked at the board, and there is a very specific reason why we didn't look into it, so.
Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just to request that perhaps the chair of finance or the board chair or you or somebody might ask the same question to the county executive who's made this request, how many years back we should go. We've heard it from the treasurer's representative saying, well, you're supposed to do it every year, but at the same time it feels unrealistic to go back 20 years worth of audits to catch up on. So maybe we should ask the executive what their position is, the same as we asked the treasurer and so forth.
It is a pox in all our houses, isn't it?
Well, it's obviously something that, thankfully is now being corrected moving forward. But, what are they asking for? How many, are they just asking for last year's forensic audit? Are they asking for 20 years of forensic audit? What is the executive asking for? And just a quick note on Commissioner Romano's request for the printed copies. I believe they're 800 pages, so can we use forfeiture fund for the paper and the copying of those 800 pages? Because it's quite a bit.
You're right. I should have designated the time frame. What do you want to go back?
That's just, 800 pages is just the last 2 years, I believe, of checks that have been written. They were too big to be emailed.
800 checks in 2 years?
No, 800 pages of checks. So it's more than 800 checks in 2 years. It's it's got to be thousands of checks over the last 2 years that were provided, the court essentially ordered provided. So it's thousands of checks. They're condensed to, I believe, 800 pages of paper. I was told it was 800. I looked through about 80 of them, and my eyes started to glaze over because it's quite a bit. It's okay. I mean, as long as you say you can print them up and bring them.
They'll figure it out.
That's fine.
They'll figure it out. But they can.
Point of information, Mr.
Commissioner
Chairman.
Carabelli.
And if I'm not mistaken, 2 years was requested by finance so they can determine a budget setting forth to go forth. Now, it's the board's discretion on what you want to go ahead and set any number you want. But the reality comes in, you're going to pay for whatever you're going to ask for. And I'm not saying don't ask. All I'm saying is that, what are you looking for? If you're looking for wrongdoings of the prosecutor and you want to go back 35 years, that's the discretion of this board. If you want to go the 2 years that the finance director was requesting, that's one thing. Or if you want to do a sample audit of it. I don't know what the cost is. I guarantee you, a forensic one, when I hear that name, I see dollar signs.
Our auditors will be able to help us.
But I'm saying we do have to come up with something, and because finance, and if I'm mistaken, somebody correct me, finance wanted it so they could help project a budget. Is that the way I understood it? And again, I'm not here to pontificate on what year and how long, but just what are we looking for at the end of the day?
Sure.
Okay, so that's food for thought. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Point of information,
please,
I
go
do appreciate the deputy treasurer coming down here and expanding a little bit on what this letter is. He's given us his position that he would like to go back as many years as the records allow. I do think somebody from the executive department, since they wrote this letter as well, should come down here and give us some guidance on what to do as well, and then we decide, and I think we should take a look at some pricing, because if you think attorneys are bad, you should see how bad accountants are in the forensic audit.
That makes you feel better, doesn't it?
Mr. Chair, it's my understanding we set aside money in the executive's office budget for special priorities, $50,000, and this is a request from the executive.
We can
so-
take the money from anywhere we want, from the Board of
Great,
Commissioners.
thank you.
Thank you. Need a motion to receive and file. The motion's already been made, need a vote. Thank you, Commissioner. Thank you. Item 5, appointment interviews for Macomb County Ethics Board. The person that, the latest appointee for the Macomb County Ethics Board is not here. There's one vacancy, a 5-year term. Doria Newland. Need to receive and file the. Please receive and file the applicant's not here today. Doria Nolan, the latest appointment for the Ethics Board. Please.
Thank you. Doria's been on the Ethics Board for quite some time already. She does a great job. I don't know if she talked to Patty or Crystal about being here, but she's the only one that's applied for the one vacancy that's open, and she's been doing a great job on there. So I don't know that she was told she really had to be here.
All right, okay.
Thank you.
All right.
This will move forward, right? I mean, I believe,
We'll
right?
forward it to full board.
Forward recommendation to full board.
Yes. All right.
You want it, what, you do it here, approve it, and then?
No, we can do whatever you guys want, we just don't usually vote on these in any
No.
shape or form.
Just move it to full board, that's fine.
Is that the full board? Okay, all those in favor say aye. Or, well, old school. The noes have it. All right. Item 6 is presentation, Civic Clerk process review. Crystal?
Hi. Okay, I was just going to give you guys a brief overview of the Civic Clerk system. We have a lot of new committee chairs that I was supposed to start meeting with, but the weather kind of affected that this week, so I'll be meeting with all of you hopefully over the next week. I'm just going to give you a demonstration too, so you can see what the staff sees as we're approving the items, and many of you have probably already been in this view as a committee chair, but in case you haven't, it'll give you a better understanding of it as well. Did Courtney switch us over? Okay. So many of you know that we originally implemented the system in January of 2017 with the last term of the last board, and originally, the way it was designed was the departments were submitting the items directly to our agendas, the agenda that they would target, that they wanted their agenda item on. After a few months, the executive's office didn't like that the submissions from the other departments were visible to anyone before they could look at them and decide that they should go before the board. So at that time, they paid our vendor to create a permission setting where they had their own silo or agenda. So any of the departments reporting to them submit to their side of things. It's the dark side that we can't see until they decide we can see it. Anything else submitted, anything we put on, that's available to anyone logging in the system. It's transparent, it's the way we want it to be. So the elected officials were told, you do not have to submit it to the non-transparent side because you're an elected official, you do not answer to the executive, and it only benefits you when, I know a lot of you as committee chairs, you get calls from them as their items are working through the approval path, and it would be nice for you to be able to access that item and see what they're talking about. So I brought you an example of we have 3 items on tomorrow's agenda from elected officials. All of these were handled differently by the executive's office, which is interesting. So item 6C here, we have a budget amendment from the clerk's office. So this item, the clerk's office submitted directly onto our agenda. It was sent at the deadline date, but because we could see it, we knew it was coming, we left it on this agenda. The next 2 are items from the sheriff's office, and these are to purchase patrol vehicles, which I don't know if any of you have ever seen a request for a purchase. I know as long as I've been in this office, those requests have not been coming to the board office, but we're starting to see them now. So the sheriff's office had reached out to Commissioner Leonetti and staff about submitting this item, and we explained, you're an elected official, you can submit it right to our agenda, and then, you know, as they had already talked to Commissioner Leonetti, he would be looking for that too. I don't know what happened between that and then submitting it, but they did submit it through the executive side where we couldn't see it, and it did come over a couple days after the deadline date. So I have moved it on. I do think it would be a good policy to not allow those late agenda items. I know in the past year, departments get upset, commissioners get upset, public gets upset when we don't have a finalized agenda several days before the meeting. And this affects that, because if it's not coming over until a day or 2 later, it takes me a day or 2 to review it, and then the chair has to review it and decide whether it's on, and then you guys have to review it before the meeting. So then you're only a day or 2 before the meeting by the time that takes place. So as committee chairs, you guys can decide how to handle those. I try to keep with the policy that if it's after the deadline date, and this is the very first time we're seeing it, we shouldn't be allowing those on last minute, just unless maybe there's a certain circumstance that that's happening. But especially when they've had the ability to let us see that item and that request and that information all along. The final item is from the prosecutor's office. So we have another elected official. This is a budget amendment, just like the clerk's office. Now this one they did start on our agenda. So I was following it along. I went a couple days ago to try to finalize this agenda. I'll go into, those of you who go into the system on the side, when you click on the agenda item, it brings you to this page. And when you click on the approvals tab, you can see where it's been and where it's going. And this is where you could actually approve it too. So you can see it went from the prosecutor's office to Dave Steitler in finance, and then it was stalled at Steve Adair in finance. So I reached out to the prosecutor's office and let them know, we have this, we see it's going on this agenda, but I really need these approvals through because we're trying to finalize this agenda. So when I finally heard back from them after some back and forth conversations, they were told the executive's office wouldn't approve it unless they submitted it directly to them on the non-transparent side where we wouldn't see it. So I let her know, well, we're not adding an agenda item the day before the meeting. So even if you are on the phone with the approvers all the way through today, that is not enough time for anybody, especially like the committee chair who's going to decide if this should go on his agenda and if we have adequate information. So right before these meetings started, I did get a call from them to pull this. I'm not sure what the executive's policy is as far as why they told the different elected officials' offices, why the clerk's office was fine submitting it this way, why the sheriff wasn't, and then why the prosecutor was kind of held up, I guess. So that's something as a board, you guys can decide what your, or even as the individual committee chairs, what policy we're going to take going forward. But this was just interesting that this all came up, and I was going to be going through this process with the committee chairs anyway. So this just gives everyone a chance, everyone on the board, to see what we're dealing with. When you get calls from the different departments or department heads, you know what I'm seeing and what I'm dealing with, and it's not, they like to just call the commissioner and think it goes right on the agenda, but here, staff, we're working on reviewing it and making sure the agendas are balanced and that everything's in on time. So, let's see. Does anyone have any questions about that? Because I did have something to add after that. Okay.
Well, I do have something, and maybe it's a little bit more specific than a question. to the entire board. So I talked to Captain Daniels from the Sheriff's Department, and this was about a week and a half ago, and he was indicating to me he was looking for some Chargers, okay, vehicles that they needed. He was talking quite a few of them, but they were Chargers. Then all of a sudden, when I looked at the agenda this morning to prepare for tomorrow, I'm seeing here that we have 2 patrol vehicles that are, in fact, they're more like SUV-type vehicles. So I don't know what happened. And when I talked to Captain Daniels a week and a half ago, I said, well, put it through our thing. We'll put it on our agenda, bring it in front of us. We'll discuss it. It'll get passed on to finance anyway. I go, that's the quicker way to do it from our perspective, because finance isn't until February 20th. That gives us time to figure it out. What's interesting is whatever was submitted to the county executives off the radar thing, it came back as something completely different that's now been put on our agenda. So I went, and I was concerned because he was talking about 9 Charger vehicles, and I thought that's about $500,000. And now all of a sudden I see 2 SUV vehicles, which is significantly less than $500,000, but it's something completely different than what Captain Daniels was originally coming to me for. So I don't know what's going on over on that end before it gets regurgitated back to us, but I guess it's something we have to figure out.
And we like to keep everything transparent, and we try to force everyone to do everything through the system. If I make an additional request, I make it in the system so they can attach it, so that anybody who's been involved or approved it can see that. And I know I even have, like, Jacob will call me when he's submitting an item and make sure he's going to have the proper paperwork, but I don't see it until it's already gone through the approval pass. So asking him for something at that point is it's changing his attachments at that point. So I know it was helpful for the departments that we could see it when they were submitting it, because they don't want it to get through all those people and then us ask for something different, but we can't control what process they follow under the executive's office, but that's why we try to work together with the elected officials and help them out.
Very good. Mr. Chairman Smith.
No, not me. That was from last time.
Jimmy. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Have you guys checked with like Pete to see the process, if we set it up, how we set it up? Where I understand the executive, he has a process, those particular departments report directly to him, and he's got his internal checks and balances. Through the executive's office, it would be finance as part of anybody's decision process of checking off, was it budgeted for, so forth and so on. But it's wouldn't it be up to the board to accept what's going to be on the agenda or not from the other department-wide? Has anybody talked to Pete? Or did he give us direction on what this should be? The attorney.
Oh, yeah, our independent.
I'm
Yes,
sorry.
I've talked to way back Scott Smith and Pete, and basically we set up the process. It was communicated to everybody, but kind of we need to be consistent with our allowances. So obviously exceptions can always be made, but Pete was supportive, as was Scott, with if it doesn't go through the process preferred by the Board of Commissioners, it shouldn't be considered. As Crystal showed you, when you submit on the transparent side, it has the exact same approval path as it should. So it does go to finance, it does go to the executive office before it comes here for allowance on an agenda. So I think maybe one of the fears or arguments of somebody who doesn't think that electeds should submit directly to us in the transparent side is that, they might want to make changes that they don't think the board understands, but we're pretty secure that you guys know what you're doing.
Glad you think so. Good.
John, if no one else.
No, we gotta go. Commissioner Romano.
Thank you. So if I may, Chair, through the chair, to the chair, I'm sure you've seen this before, because I'm sure Crystal and you have discussed this. What would be your recommendations to make sure that we see this, or do we not put it on the agenda unless we see it immediately? What is your recommendation?
My recommendation is first of all, is for us to decide as a board how we're going to act upon these things. And so that's kind of why this was brought up. This has been going on, and we've had discussions with the executive's office several times about this separate submittal process, and that's really what we have, is we have a separate submittal process. And I will say that Scott Smith, back in the day, who was our counsel for 7 years, and Pete, both have said that we are the ones that have to decide on budget items. Let's just take budget items. Those are the most important ones, right? That we decide whether it meets our criteria or not. That's why it would come to the side of, our side, our portal. And if we didn't need to act on it, we wouldn't act on it. But instead, it's going to the executive's office first, and they're making the decision for us, whether it meets our criteria or not. So our attorneys for years have said, and I think, that's part of our lawsuit right now with accessibility to see what's, the IFAS program, is that it shouldn't be someone else telling us if something met our policy. We're the ones that are supposed to decide whether it meets our policy. So that's where the contention has been for, at least a year or two, on what side everybody deposits their information in. Because when it goes to the executive's office, we don't see it until they've made a decision, and so there are many things we don't see. Whether we have to see them or not, I mean, that's, apparently they would say that we don't, but we've had differences of opinion on things before. So, we have to decide, I guess, and that's where it comes down to, are we gonna stand strong? I mean, we put the departments are a different story, right? I mean, they're under the executive, but the electeds are not. And they might say that we're not going to approve anything if you don't put it through ours, and we might say we're not going to look at it even if it didn't come through ours. So, we would be like this, and who would get squeezed in the middle would be all the elected officials. So, I mean, our decision has to be, as a group, what are we going to do, and how are we going to, how are we going to fix this? Are we going to just say, okay, everything goes to the executive's office, or are we going to say that we demand our system be used the way we developed it? So I think that's really a board decision. It's not, and that's
Commissioner
my
Hall?
take on it.
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. At the suggestion of Chairman Smith, I sat with Patty and Mike and a little bit with Crystal to get a tutorial on this process, let alone a tutorial, but the history of what's transpired, how did it get to this, what would it take to fix it on both sides. And I can probably say I've got enough information to be extremely dangerous, so I won't offer a suggestion, but the agenda item said motion to receive and file. So, Mr. Chairman, we're not really taking any action on this. This is informational only. Am I correct in that assumption? Thank you very much. And thank you, Crystal. I will see you guys again tomorrow.
Commissioner Kleinfeld.
Thank you. So on our system, on the transparent side, there's still an approval process through the executive for agenda items that are other countywide electives, right? And then it goes to us, correct?
Right, just like this prosecutor one, this was placed directly on our agenda, and so that's why I was confused when she said the executive wants to see it first. I said, it is going to them before us. Click on the approvals tab. It went from them to finance and then to the executive's office. And then Michelle has the ability to decide which, they have the different deputies will approve different types of items. And then after that, it comes to us. So it was still going to them before us. We could just see that it was there and expected to come before they looked.
So here's my question. Not with respect to the one that you showed us, because it's a little different. It's a budget amendment. But with respect to items that are already in the budget and have already been approved by the county executive to be in the budget, as well as by the board to be in the budget, why do countywides have to go through even in our process, why do they have to go through the county exec's office to make a purchase that he's already approved in the budget and we've already approved in the budget?
So like a contract?
Anything, any purchase
Okay.
that we've already approved in the budget. So I'm glad we're finally getting the cars. I've been pushing for that because they said, each car is an individual purchase. No, it isn't. But any ordinary purchase that they purchase every year has already been approved through the budget process by the county executive and by us. So I'm just wondering, why does our own approval process have them going through the county exec's office?
Point of information, all contracts, if it's a contract, have to be signed by the executive's office, if I'm not mistaken.
Okay. So, okay.
Yeah, and that's, yeah.
That's the
Yeah.
reason. Okay, thank you for, I'm getting a little old over here.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, I had one more follow-up to that. So many of you remember we adopted a new capital plan funding policy with the budget, and as a part of that was a form of information that was going to be required for any capital plan funding request starting this year. So we've also, in addition to that form, the only other item that needed an additional form was the contract. There was a contract review form the county has been using for years. So we wanted to redo what the departments are filling out in this system, and we've incorporated the information that's required for any of the capital plan funding requests and the contract review form, because a couple of those had the same information that they were already filling out. So Mike has been working really hard to help make those changes, and I know he has handed some of you a draft of what the new forms are going to look like. If any of you did not receive that and want to review it, you can get a copy from him and let us know if you have any feedback. We do need to get those changes made really quick because that's going to allow us to set up all of the remaining agendas for the rest of the year. We just wanted to make sure that we have anything that you're looking for on every agenda item is easily there for the department to fill out. And I'm hoping this helps the departments a lot because they don't always know what information you're looking for, and then I'm going through the 10 attachments that they added to make sure it's there before I can approve it, and it should be, at a glance, they can fill it out, and I can see if it's there before we even put it on the agenda. It should hopefully save time for everybody.
Commissioner Brown. Yes, Secretary Belli, please. Thank you. I don't know if anybody had the opportunity, and I really appreciate the extra work that you guys put into this. This is some good stuff, and at the end of the day, this is going to encapsulate, hey, you're looking for an $80,000 application. Oh, and by the way, how much is that fee every year after that? Oh, and by the way, it's really a $300,000 thing, not the $80,000 that you see, that they're actually putting a total package together. And then what I had asked is that if there's, say, $1 million in an account, and they want to take $100,000 out of it, that you're going to see a check and balance of, started out with $1 million, here's your minus. Here, at some point in time, you say, well, you want to make an amendment? Yeah, well, go back and take a look. You may want to make a reduction in your own budget before you come and ask us to take it out of it. The other thing I had mentioned earlier, and I appreciate, you guys did a lot of work, and this is going to help us, I think, really in the process, is the lifespan of the request, I think, needs to be considered, meaning if you're buying a program and we decided we're going to spend $500,000 on a new program, and it's only a 3-year maintenance fee and licensing, well, we'll buy a new program in another 3 years. So somehow we have to capture long-term impact of, now, by approving that, did you just handicap the budget that you're going to be every 3 years spending another $500,000? These are the things that up front will help us make a better decision because, hey, a new program, $100,000, oh, okay, another $50,000 a year for maintenance fees. Oh, next thing you know, you're at $300,000, but you're going to do that every budget from here on out, and then pretty soon you're going to run out of money. So I think this is going to be important, the stuff that we're putting in it. And the other thing is I don't know about the rest of the commissioners, I like to see the impact. So if we're buying a program or something, is it saving any jobs? What part of the residency of this county is it benefiting? Who benefits from something we spend money on? Okay, it's for community mental health, the food program, whatever it may be. We see that it's taking care of this portion of the demographics of our county. But then all of a sudden we'll look at it, well, hang on a minute. This is only going to take care of a building for 8 employees, and we're spending $1 million to make it easier, and they're not getting rid of anybody, and we're not doing no more work, well, then we have to justify if you're going to vote yes for that or no for that. That information, I don't know how we can put that in there, but we have to capture that, because these are the questions that end up coming out every time somebody asks a question. What? Well, now they can fill that out before you even look at it, and all of the questions will be answered prior to. So, thank you.
Thank you. Anybody else? Any more information, Crystal?
Nope, that's all I had.
Anybody else? It's very good information. And, all right, motion to receive and file, please, from Gillette, supported by Douget. Please vote. Thank you. Resolutions, want to take them in their entirety? Commissioner? All right. All right, resolution on 7A. Urging Macomb County Executive to consider submission of application, Michigan State, you see that, item A. Need a motion on that? Motion by Marv, is there support? Support for 7A. Harold, okay, discussion on this item. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Do you mind if I give a little bit of a, kind of a prep on this, and then you can ask your questions?
Yes.
If that's okay? Is that okay,
Please,
Chair?
go ahead.
Sorry. This comes from our older adult committee, and one of the things that they were charged with was this Community of a Lifetime designation, which Patty will explain a little bit here. If maybe we want to let her explain it unless you have some other questions, but kind of what they've done. This is through their actions on that older adult committee, and, you know, kind of doing some research in our community, and then, you know, kind of like we looked at the beginning, this committee would, you know, take on a task to gather some information for us, and then we would, if we found it appropriate, hand it off to the executive's office or the Department of the Senior Services, and say, here, this is, you know, this is what we found, this is what the group found, please, you know, act as you wish with it, but, you know, we would hope that you would take it and you know, do something with it. So this, Patty, if you want to explain just a little bit, if that's okay, Commissioner, what this designation, lifetime designation from Macomb County is about. In
Sure.
10 words or less.
Okay. When the Older Adult Advisory Committee was formed, we realized we had quite a resource of people from within all of your communities, legs on the ground, so to speak. They have expertise and activities in a lot of different areas, and we thought that their input is very valuable. The first task they did was to create a recreational activities inventory, and they put that together, provided a report. You guys received that last year. Crystal and I went to SEMCOG, and we heard someone speak from the state, Dan Dozema, who talked about the Community for a Lifetime survey. We thought it was a perfect match for our Older Adult Advisory Committee to take on, because they, as I mentioned, are the people who are active within your communities. They have extremely broad reach into, you know, little pockets of people that maybe you can't get out and see every day, and they are active in those communities all the time. So the Community for a Lifetime survey is not just for older people. It is a survey that takes the perspective from the older adult as to how amenable the community is in certain areas. And the survey is split up into different segments. What we did was form work groups. Courtney worked on that, and our Older Adult Advisory Committee members each joined a work group, and they have been working very hard to evaluate from their perspective these different parts of the community. The end goal is to objectively rate the community to see if it is, you know, good from the perspective of the older adult, because that means if somebody can walk across the street, if the timers allow for somebody with a walker going across the street or in a wheelchair, that's also good for a mom maybe pushing a stroller or a younger child walking their bike across the street. So it's meant to be for the entire community. I guess that's it in a nutshell so far.
All right.
Okay, can I?
Commissioner Gillette?
Thank you.
If I play my game, I lost
Great.
my...
So, I guess what I'm most interested in knowing is what we're actually asking for from the state. Are they the ones that are going to do the survey for us? Are we getting funds to do a survey? Are the state going to do a survey? Is that what we're asking for?
No.
Okay, so we're not asking for them to do a survey. We've done the survey, or we're going to do the survey?
Yeah, the Older Adult Advisory Committee, there are 12 chapters to this particular survey. Do you want to talk about it?
So if we are not asking the state to provide a survey for us, what are we asking the state to do for us?
Once you submit the survey, which is the objective view of these 12 different items.
So we're submitting a survey to the state.
To the state.
I'm sorry.
We're jumping the gun.
We're asking the executive to,
Well, yeah,
Okay, so
with this information,
Okay,
it would be submitted to the state,
okay.
and they would call you a community for a lifetime.
So we're asking them to give us a
designation.
name.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so the survey's been done, we're not asking for that. We're just saying, here's our information, give us an attaboy.
Well,
Or so.
yeah, it connects the communities that do achieve this certification with some other, notoriety, some other resources.
Like what kind of stuff could they get?
Well, they're posted on the website
Oh.
of the state, and they are, a
Okay.
resource for other communities as well.
Okay. Okay,
As
thank
to
you. I just
people
wasn't
who are
sure if
doing
we were
it
asking
right.
for a survey. I just kind of wanted to know. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, need a motion do we have a motion? All right, please vote. Thank you very much, it passes. Thank you very much. All right. Item 7B, establish board legislative priorities for 2019-20 term. There's a motion, I need a motion, moved by Kraft, supported by? Supported by Mr. Haw, Commissioner Haw. Any discussion on this item? Well, please vote. All those. Motion passes. Item 8, new business. Any new business? Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Thank you. I'm going to be sending a couple of emails to Steve Smigo, or one email that lists a series of questions I wanted commissioners to be aware of. There's going to be a series of questions relative to animal control that will make it clear to the commissioners in St. Clair Shores, East Point, Sterling Heights, Warren, Roseville, and Mount Clemens, what the difference is between what we get and what everybody else gets. And then I want to remind everybody that it wasn't just the prosecutor's office that was flagged for having an account that was not on the books. There was one in the clerk's office, and we never found out. We still don't know if that's on the books now, but we don't know what revenues went into that account. We don't know anything about that account, so that is another thing I'm going to be requesting information on, because that might be important for the meeting on the 20th as well. I also, for us, all this discussion on how we are getting our information from them, we haven't gotten the finalized budget, I didn't think. We had our binders and we made our little changes, but we don't have the finalized budget with budget numbers involved, correct?
No, in fact, Dave Steitler just called over yesterday. He asks us to reformat the appropriations ordinance, removing page numbers and things like that, and so he's working on that right now.
Okay, and so the finalized budget, if you noticed, our binder didn't have line item numbers. But when they come to us and they make a budget amendment, they give us a line item number. And so I want to be able to go to that line item and mark why there was an amendment. So if it's a one-time expenditure the following year, then that money shouldn't automatically be asked again. So I just wanted you guys to know that's the other question that I'm going to be, and we're in January, and I don't know how many budget amendments we've had, but we need to know whether Crystal can do it or the finance department, how many budget amendments we've already done, what those line items are, what they were for, so that we can go ahead and make those changes in the new budget. So I just wanted you guys to know, I've got that all written down. I'm going to be putting it in an email and sending it to Steve.
Thank you. Any other new business? Commissioner?
Just to answer, Crystal does track all of that. So I don't know how it would be best to disseminate to everybody, you know, the changes that are made throughout the year, but I think that's something that we need to have on a general basis. And we'll talk about that.
Commissioner Romano?
Thank you, Chair. We had I say we, myself, Chair Smith, Commissioner Leonetti, Commissioner Duje, and Commissioner Lucido had an interesting meeting with the sheriff this afternoon regarding his... Mark joins us. I'm sorry. Commissioner Sagar also joined on a proposal for the jail. If you have not made yourself available to him to have him show you his proposal, please do so. I don't want to bring up numbers or figures or anything now because he's going to make a presentation to us, but it kind of gives us a jump start of what he's going to do in case we have any questions, and I really think it's to our advantage, or anybody's advantage who's going to vote on this, to meet with him prior to him making his presentation. Thank you, Chair.
Commissioner Leonetti?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple things just to go off of Commissioner Kleinfeld, what she was saying, and I talked to Mike Hughes about that this afternoon. I don't know if you've seen, they've got a new recommendation sheet that we're going to provide. And I had suggested that when you, for example, when we had Gary Cutler coming in here and saying, okay, I got to move $289,000 out of this as a budget amendment, that we have that right here on the recommendation sheet, so that we take it right out of, being a lawyer here, but when we take it right out of here, we show right on here what he's talking about or what she's talking about when a department person comes in here. I think that would be great for us to keep track individually, and it almost creates like its own minutes in terms, visual minutes in terms of what they're amending or what they're adding to the budget. So by the end of the year, we could take a look at all these and correlate it with this and make sure nothing's missing. So I think that would be a great thing to do. So when you have Gary coming in here today and saying, I got to take this out of whatever line item it is in here, let's put that right on our budget recommendation. Let's make the departments do that before they submit it to us. That's number one. And number two, based on the discussion between the treasurer and the prosecutor, I'm going to see if we can have the finance chair, Veronica, have Hackle here or somebody from his department here telling us what he thinks in terms of how far back we should go for an audit. Because everybody says there should be an audit, and we need some parameters on that. The treasurer wants to go as far back as we can. Let's see what he has to say. Thank you.
Thank you.
Information, Mr. Chairman, if I can.
Yeah.
Can I recommend that maybe Plant Moran, who could give some direction and authorize a phone call to say, hey, is it 2 years? We're good. Listen, I'm not, all the information we can get is going to be great. My thing is that at what point and what are we looking for? Are we looking for Steve to be able to project his budget in the future? What is the end game? And until somebody can tell me an end game of what you're looking for, I'm struggling with this. And now he said, what was that account he says you have to have for the sheriff's department, a special, that we don't have?
That fund.
Yeah, whatever that was. The point is that there's other ones out there too, and she brought up another one at the clerk's office. I need to get my arms around everything here to really try to get an understanding, because I am perplexed. I'm trying to understand some accountant, he's telling me that we should be set up for the sheriff's department. Well, who else heard that before today?
All right. Commissioner Kleinfeld?
Okay, first of all, I apologize. Two things, because I had them on my paper and I didn't say them.
Go ahead.
I want everybody here to know that I apologize to Commissioner Brown because I felt in closed session I was awfully quick on him one day, and it wasn't appropriate. I thought it was, it deserved an apology, And I want everybody to know that I apologized to him, and he was very gracious in his acceptance of that apology. The other thing is, with regard to the jail meeting, and this is really, I really want commissioners to think about this. There's only 4 times this has happened since I've been here, where we've been asked to meet in small groups, but all of us. The $65 million project, which is a huge thing that would be a public issue. The veterans millage that we were going to be asked to be placing on the ballot. The 911 fee that we would be assessing to people, and now the jail and how to fund that and what to do with that. We should not be meeting in small groups. There is no reason we can't do a workshop in our conference room if we need to be like looking at each other, asking questions of them in a more informal setting. But I want to know what your questions are. I want to know what your questions are. And I don't understand why this board is just jumping and meeting in small groups, because we are not supposed to do that. And I will, if it continues, be asking Shepka again to issue an illegal opinion, because I'm not even 100% sure that we legally can. But even if we can, why are we not meeting together so we get to the benefit of hearing all of us, rather than just administration getting the benefit of hearing what we all have to say? So, thank you.
Very good point. Good point. Absolutely.
All right, thank you. Commissioner Gillette.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would request to the Finance Chair that we do have somebody at the meeting that can answer technical questions about audits themselves, because I don't know what an impression fund is, and I'm not even exactly sure what a forensic audit actually uncovers. And there's a lot of terminology, and there's maybe a lot of technical questions. So maybe we can have somebody from our auditing firm, just to answer technical questions throughout that process, if that's possible. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Gillette. Anybody else in the new business? Mr. Haw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. To follow on Commissioner Carabelli and Commissioner Gillette's statement, Plant Moran should be there to explain the parameters of a forensic audit and give us an indication of a cost over a period of time, because the dynamics of this thing is very far-reaching. I'm not saying there's anything wrongdoing here. I'm not saying there's anything that was procedurally followed or not followed. The parameters of it can go back probably since the creation of forfeiture funds, which was 25 years ago.
Yeah, middle 90s.
So Plant Moran should be there to explain it. The other thing I put on the table for discussion at that committee meeting is there's an assumption, I'm hearing an assumption, that Plant Moran would be the one performing the forensic audit?
No, I'm not.
Okay, well, okay, I have the floor. I'm glad to hear that, because they were the ones involved in the original audit. So I appreciate those suggestions, and I would offer to all my fellow colleagues, what I've done is gone back to one of my cities and said, because these forfeiture funds get transferred back to the local municipalities, they have their own accounts. Let's make sure everybody's doing the same thing correctly, whatever that is, because right now I don't think anybody knows. So just a suggestion if you want to open that can of worms. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Commissioner Haw. Anyone else on the new business? All right, we'll close new business. Public participation, anyone from the public? No one's from the public here. Need to move to adjourn. Moved by Commissioner Gillette, supported by Commissioner Juze. Please vote.
Right. They better have done it right.
Have a good evening. Thank you, Commissioners.
See you tomorrow.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.